You know, what happens when a rigorous scientific study kind of cracks open a door to something totally unknown? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to follow a trail that begins with a cardiologist's mind-bending research on consciousness and see how it becomes the absolute foundation for a whole new spiritual movement.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the scientific paradox that makes you question everything you thought you knew about being conscious. Then, we'll see how that paradox gets turned into proof for a new spiritual framework. And finally, we'll see how it all leads to a very, very specific date, a so-called cosmic portal.
So our story really kicks off with the work of Dr. Pim van Lommel. He's a cardiologist who got really curious and launched this massive study into what we call near-death experiences, or NDEs. And let me tell you, what he found ended up challenging the most fundamental ideas about how our brains and our consciousness are connected. This quote really gets right to the heart of the whole puzzle. See, Dr. van Lommel was studying patients who were, for all intents and purposes, clinically dead. Their hearts had stopped beating, and within just a few seconds, all the electrical activity in the brain's cortex just stops. It flatlines. According to modern science, consciousness in that state should be completely impossible. And yet, it wasn't. Now, this is super important. This wasn't just a collection of random stories. Van Lommel's research was published in The Lancet, which is a huge deal in the medical world. It was the largest study of its kind, and out of 344 survivors of cardiac arrest, a pretty significant chunk, 18%, reported having these clear, profound, life-altering experiences while their brains were completely offline. But there's one case from the study that is just wild. It seems to defy any simple explanation. So a man is brought into the ER and he's in a deep coma. While the team is resuscitating him, a nurse takes out his dentures and tucks them away on a crash cart. A week later, the patient is conscious. He sees that same nurse and he says, "Hey, you know where my dentures are?" He then described exactly where they were on that specific cart under a little sliding tray. There's no way he could have seen or heard that happen. He was totally unconscious.
So you see, this research wasn't just about collecting these incredible stories. It went a step further. It directly took on all the conventional scientific explanations for these experiences, testing the old theories against this new, hard data.
And here's the kicker. All the usual explanations, they just didn't fit the facts. Lack of oxygen? Nope, that didn't explain who had an NDE and who didn't. Fear of death? Well, most of these cardiac arrests happened so fast there was no time to be afraid. Side effects for medication? Again, no difference between the groups. And what about hallucinations? Well, as Dr. van Lommel pointed out, you kind of need a working brain to have one of those.
This all led van Lommel to this really radical, mind-bending conclusion. What if the brain doesn't produce consciousness at all? What if instead it just receives it? He uses this great analogy of a TV. The television itself doesn't create the show, right? It just tunes into the broadcast signal that's already out there. In this view, consciousness is non-local. It exists outside of our regular time and space, and our brain is just the biological hardware that tunes it in.
And right here, this is where our story takes a major turn. Because this radical scientific conclusion, this idea that consciousness could be separate from the brain, becomes the absolute foundational proof for a spiritual organization called the United Universe Church Galaxy Academy, or UUCGA. You have to understand, for the UUCGA, Van Lommel's work isn't just some interesting theory to debate. For them, it's case closed. The debate is over. They see it as science finally validating their entire worldview. It's the point where, as they say, the proving stops and the being begins. So, building on this foundation, this idea of non-local consciousness, the UUCGA starts to construct its own sovereign systems. I mean, they've created entirely new ways of looking at time, at value, at healing, all of it designed to operate outside what they consider the dogma of the old world. Let's look at a couple of quick examples. This is a perfect illustration of how they think. First up, they completely reject the 12-month Gregorian calendar we all use. They call it an artificial patriarchal system, and they replace it with something called the Tun Uc, which is a 13-moon calendar they say is aligned with natural feminine cycles, what they call the true heartbeat of Mother Earth. And it's not just time they're rethinking. They've also created a whole new system of value called the Anu coin. Now, this isn't money like we think of it. It's described as an energetic currency. It's used inside their own economy and for their healing systems, and according to them, its value doesn't come from work or from being rare, it comes directly from consciousness itself.
Okay, so you have this new philosophy, a new calendar, a new currency. But these aren't just abstract ideas. For the UUCGA, all of this is building toward one single, pivotal event. It's a global call to action, and it's all focused on one specific date.
And that date is February 20th, 2026. The UNCGA doesn't see this as just another day on the calendar. They call it a cosmic portal, a kind of energetic turning point where they believe a massive global shift in consciousness is actually possible.
So how do you get ready for something like that? Well, they've laid out a specific meditation they call the SNS ritual. And check out step 1, the disconnection. This is a direct callback to those out-of-body experiences in Dr. Van Lommel's research. The whole point is to consciously get to that state of being a witness to your own body, to disconnect from the purely physical so you can merge with what they call Anunnaki infinite intelligence. And what's really fascinating here is that the ultimate goal isn't to escape reality or leave the world behind. It's actually the complete opposite. The whole idea is to achieve this higher state of awareness and then bring it back with you, integrate it into your everyday life. The aim is for followers to literally become walking portals, living, breathing conduits for this new cosmic energy. So let's just recap for a second. We've gone from a rigorous, data-driven medical study published in a top journal, all the way to a global call for a spiritual awakening on a specific date. It's just a stunning example of what can happen when a scientific paradox becomes the bedrock of faith. And it leaves us with this one big question. When science opens a door to the unknown, what rushes in to fill that space?